أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We begin in the name of our Almighty Creator, who has blessed us with our faith, with our Iman, who has blessed us with so many favors, that which we see all around us, and of course that which we take for granted. And we begin with a very important topic. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The importance of learning history, but not just any history, Islamic history, our history. When we say history, when we say Islamic history, we're talking about world history. And when we speak about world history and Islam, we must realize that Islam had an impact, a huge impact, a phenomenal impact all around the world, almost in every corner of the world. Muslims, Islam, the Quran, and the example of our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to all parts of the world. So understanding, knowing, learning the history of Islam should be one of our key priorities. Every Muslim should put this as one of their priorities. We should search for our history and try to gain and seek the most authentic and reliable sources of history and heritage that we can. The history and heritage of every civilization before and after Islam was brought unto us is a key factor to ensure that it is both long-lasting and successful. If a civilization does not maintain its history, if it does not maintain its heritage, we find that it will slowly dissolve and be overtaken by another civilization, and in extreme cases, without even knowing it. For centuries, people have known how important the history books are. Many people have tried to write their names in the history books in order to become everlasting, in order to become eternal throughout time. And yes, many people have been very successful. Many people from ancient times, we remember, we know them well. We hear their names. And of course, there are many people that have tried very hard but have been quite easily forgotten. So there are many factors which determine this, in this, of course, very important, very sacred, crucial duty of recording the history. Many figures or civilizations can be remembered both in a positive and in a negative light, depending on their actions, and very important, who came after them. What you leave behind is how you will be remembered afterwards. And who takes over after you will also determine the way that you are remembered. In order to gain power, influence and control, the history books were and are a very important tool. And the way that a time period is written can have a profound impact on many later generations to come. Over the years, we have found that many events or figures have been grossly over-exaggerated or completely fabricated to meet the needs and desires of certain individuals. This is what people in power have been doing. People in power are doing this, And of course, some go to the extent of hiding certain gruesome aspects from the world, which are only coming into light now, only coming into light today, where research teams are going and finding discrepancies, finding faults in the records, or finding hard fact and evidence in the records. However, we can never completely be sure when it comes to many of these events, especially if it is evident that these records have been tampered with. Dominant nations and conquerors, we know some of their names, we know some of these communities, some of these organizations, if you want to call it that, such as the colonial powers, the colonial reign. We know people like Napoleon, we know people like Genghis Khan. All knew the importance of history. All knew the importance of heritage through their campaigns. They each went to extreme lengths to romanticize their images or cover up their atrocities, and above all, they knew that in order to completely take control and conquer a people, a nation, they needed to destroy the heritage and the history of that people. They did this by, of course, destroying centers of learning, libraries, important monuments, killing or enslaving important scholars, and at some times hiring false scholars, fake scholars, to write false history, false facts, to ensure that there is nothing left behind of that civilization. They also knew that names of people and languages was a very important factor in carrying on one's history and one's heritage. Many of us name our children, or many of us have been named after important people. And that is how people in ancient times carried on their history or their lineage or their heritage in that way. And also in language, that was very important. So they forced many people either to change their names and forced them to stop speaking their mother tongue, and they were forced to speak the language of their new masters. We also experienced a lot of this here in South Africa during the apartheid regime, and we see more extreme, or to a greater extent, in the United States, where many slaves were brought to the region. Their names were changed to things as simple as Big, Mr. Big, or Mr. Small, or Mr. Tall. So we see it all over the world. It is so sad, it is so unfortunate, it is terribly heartbreaking to see that many Muslims around the world don't know their own history, losing touch of our heritage. A lot of it that once made us proud and strong to stand up as Muslims, to stand up proud as Muslims, to hold on to what makes us what we are, has been lost, or it has been neglected. Many of us know the basics. We know the basic history of Islam. We know the early history of Islam. We know the basic history of the prophets, or a few of them. We know who the first 4 Khalifas were. But after this, what happened after that? It becomes very hazy. And we see that a lot of that history has been lost, has been neglected, has been left behind. Even some of the great struggles that the first 4 Khalifas went through, the great victories that they went through. These are people that were close to our beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that knew him well, that worked hard and strived to follow the values within the Quran. These are people that we should know. These are people that we should research and we should learn from. Part of this depressing factor is, of course, due to external threats. You can look at the colonial powers that worked very hard, not only against Muslims, but many other nations, to destroy their history and heritage, to totally break them down, because that's the only way you're going to take over a people. You can have all the guns and all the technology, but you need to take over the mind to control the people. And of course, some of it is due to the enemies of Islam over the years that worked hard to destroy our heritage. But I'm sure we all know a large factor is due to us, due to our ancestors that took over. The infighting, the neglect, the struggle for power, Muslim killing Muslim, brother killing brother. And we know that always leads to greater problems that lasts generations. Our own infighting caused much of our history to be destroyed, left behind or forgotten, in effort to promote, in some cases, new Islamic schools of thought, so-called new Islamic schools of thought, and to legitimize these new leaders that came in, that infiltrated, to legitimize their leadership. Some of these leaders, let's call them so-called leaders, went to the extent of writing false histories, putting other Muslims in a negative light to secure their power, to make sure that their power is legitimate. I don't want to mention names, I don't want to mention schools of thought, we don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of it all, but we must be aware of certain processes that were taken, certain steps that were taken at this time. Our own corruption will eventually lead to our downfall. The task is on us, the present, to go to every part of the world where Islamic history is evident, to compile an objective record of Islamic history. Many civilizations that came out of the colonial rule, let's look at the colonial rule, they sent out their scholars to gain and research. Even here in South Africa, the traditional African history, our government has put it onto themselves to research and investigate their history and compile it so that it may be taught to later generations. So we as Muslims should put on the very same effort for both us and, more importantly, later generations. For Allah commands us in Surah 2, verse 246, Allah says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Do they not travel through the land, so that their hearts and minds may thus learn wisdom, and their ears may thus learn to hear? Truly, it is not their eyes that are blind, but their hearts which are in their breasts. So this, of course, applies to seeing Allah's signs all over. The beauty is all over. But at the same time, Allah is saying, go through the earth. Travel, learn, gain, open up your minds and your hearts and see what was once evident. See where we once walked, see where we once conquered, where we once ruled, how we ruled. The importance of knowing one's history is so vast, it is so crucial, it's so important. There's so many benefits. Let's look at a few. We know first and foremost, we learn from our mistakes, from the errors that we made in the past. If we learn from the faults that Muslims in the past made, we can rectify today. It creates a sense of pride and duty. Once great victories can inspire us today. It creates unity and brotherhood. When we see how our ancestors worked together to cooperate, bonds created lifetimes ago are not meant to be forgotten and are definitely not meant to be broken. It gives us good role models and examples to follow. And it gives us a guide on how to react in certain situations that we might face today. It allows us to stay true to our roots and not to dissolve and become part of the unbeliever's lifestyle and falsely believe that they are better. This is a big problem. So many times I speak to the older generation, a lot of them will say, the white men, they gave us this, they made this, medicine, technology. But we're so brainwashed by them because why? We've lost our history, we've lost our heritage. It draws a clear line between cultural practices that have infiltrated religion. Certain things we do, but we don't know why we do it. Where did it come from? Where did it stem from? Is it Islam? Is it not Islam? This is important for us to know. We are told in Surah 2, verse 154, and say not of those who are slain in the way of Allah, they are dead, nay, they are living, though you perceive it not. Allah is telling us here that these people who sacrifice everything, the greatest sacrifice, their lives, they are not dead, they are living. But we will not see this. We will not understand it as it should be understood. By giving up their lives for the cause of Islam, they live on through their deeds and through their actions. Because of their deeds, we stand here today. We practice our religion today. And Islam survives, of course, with their efforts through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they live on within us and within Islam. Their job is done, and we are benefiting from their ultimate sacrifice. Whether we realize it or not, whether we remember them or not, it will not affect their reward. It will not affect what Allah has given them. However, it is important, it is so important that we know who these people were. We remember them. We remember these important figures. For by realizing and by knowing who they were, it will benefit us. We can implement their lifestyle in our lives today. We can practice what they did, their code. How did they live in our lives today? Their stories and their sacrifices can inspire us today and inspire many later generations today to live up to their example. We can work to follow their examples by building our societies around it. This is what our enemies fear. If we can create people with such noble characters once again, who live according to the values of the Holy Quran, with such righteous characters, Islam will always be victorious, and we will once again become the leaders of this earth. So of course, being a Muslim is not all about knowing your history and knowing your heritage. There's a lot more that falls into place, but it's so important to know it. There's so many benefits to learn it, to research it, to make the step and the effort. Let us make a conscious effort to learn about our histories, which is present all around the world if we look, and pass it on to our children, which is so important, in order that we follow the righteous examples that have been left behind and learn from mistakes that have been made in the past and build our communities and build our future around the victories of the past. Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.